The resolution mechanic, I think I discussed already, is part of the Powered by the Apocalypse framework, which is derived from Apocalypse World in that framework designed by Vincent Baker, Megway Baker. The that's there's a lot of other differences, so I wouldn't really call this a Powered by the Apocalypse game, although there are definitely similarities. You'll find that there are playbooks that you'll play, and there's a spectrum of success on a 2d6 roll where you add the trait or subtract the trait. So there's a lot of similarities, and if you've never played PPTA, that's fine. If you have played PPTA, I wouldn't go in expecting, a full-on PPTA game. But there's definitely some innovations that I brought in from Apocalypse World, and one of those is that when you are when you want to roll the dice, you have to actually trigger a move through the narrative. So you'll find in some traditional games it's like, I'm going to attack that guy, so I'm going to roll my attack to hit that guy in the face, right? And so you would roll and then adjudicate based on the roll whether or not you hit the guy in the face. In Apocalypse World or the Powered by the Apocalypse games, what happens is you'll say, I'm going to punch the guy in the face. Well, that triggers this move, which says that you punch the guy in the face, and then these are the particular outcomes that happen when you use this move. So roll to see what happens, and then on a 6 or less, you fail to hit the guy in the face. Something else goes on, or you punched yourself or whatever it is. And then on a 7 to 9 part of the spectrum, it's you punch the guy in the face, but you probably broke your knuckle doing it, right? And then on a 10 plus, it's you punch the guy in the face. So that's similar in the Great American Novel, except the major difference is you can't just make a move in the Great American Novel just because you can't just punch a guy in the face. You have to somehow tie it to a conflict. You have to confront a conflict in order to do it. The conflicts are out on the table. If you're playing at a physical table, they are index cards that says, let's use one I brought up earlier, betrayal. So this guy betrayed you. That's why you're punching him in the face. So it's not. We're not actually rolling to see whether you punched the guy or not. What you were rolling to see is why. Why did you punch the guy, and what does that mean to the story? So therefore, we're going to confront this conflict. This guy betrayed me, so I want to punch the guy in the face. And we'll look at the moves and say, okay, well, this sounds like you're lashing out, which is a falling move. As a move you can only make when you're falling on your arc. You remember the arcs. So are you sure? Because character, you're rising right now, and that means then that you're going to start falling if you take a move like that, and you can play a pop point to do that. So there's sort of an exchange of currency, a little bit of a negotiation what happens in the story, because what we're trying to do is figure out how you're confronting the conflict, why you're confronting the conflict, and what that means to the story. So let's say, oh, you know what, I'm not lashing out. I'm punching this guy in the face because he's aggressive, and I think he's coming at me, and so I'm going to protect myself. And so, well, okay, actually that's a rising move. You're protecting yourself, so let's roll that. And then you can still confront, but we're not confronting betrayal anymore because you're not lashing out. Actually, why don't we do this other conflict, which is that there's a military invasion in the city, right? So that's a conflict we're going to confront. So you roll, and then if you succeed, you've resolved the conflict leaves the table, and then we go on. If you don't, the conflict remains and still needs to be confronted. The conflicts work like aspects in Fate. They also work like clocks in PPTA. If you don't know what clocks are, the novelist will, who is the game master, will put basically a timer on the conflict so that every beat that the conflict is not confronted, something gets worse about the conflict. The conflict continues to go whether or not players confront it. So it gets worse and worse and worse until you really have got to confront it at some point. So that's basically how the moves work. The other thing I think that varies from probably what you're accustomed to, the moves themselves are not very concrete. They're not. I gave you a couple of examples: lash out, protect yourself. There's things like make a moral stand. These are abstracted moves. They aren't persuade or spot hidden or any kind of tangible move. They're abstracted because the idea of the novel is that we're dealing with characters' motivations. We're dealing with what gets in the way of their motivations, and so these happen on a higher level. I might be trying to persuade somebody, but it's not persuasion that we're checking. We're not seeing if we persuaded people. What we're doing is I'm taking a moral stand. And what does that mean? the story. So it allows more freedom when adjudicating the result of the roll.